Hey, what's up, YouTubers? This is Evan for Grips.com, back after a little bit of a hiatus. Had to do my yearly trip to Las Vegas, Nevada for the World Series of Poker, and it was a good one. It was a good one. It was a lot of fun. I know that some of you guys have already heard about that from following along on the blog, and for those of you who are avid readers, I've got good news. Trip report coming soon with all the dirty details from everything that went down this summer in the frat house. It was a lot of fun, and of course, going to be talking a little bit about the success story of my roommate and great friend, Greg Merson. For those of you who aren't familiar with him, just go ahead and do a search on Google. He's one of those Google guys now, where he's got enough going on in his life that Google recognizes him as a person, and yeah, you see there's some fun there. So anyway, sad to leave Vegas, obviously. The the hardest time of the year in any poker player's career is when they bust the main event, and it happened. Yeah, I didn't win, didn't make the Octo 9. Maybe next year. But I'm really excited to be home so that I can start making videos for you guys again. I got a ton of good feedback while I was gone, and a ton of requests for videos, and people wondering if I'd fallen off the map or was just done with the project. But good news is that is not the case. I'm still here. In fact, more than ever, ready to teach you guys, answer your questions, and get you up to that pro status that you're aspiring to get to. Most likely, if you're a casual player watching the videos, I wish I was more funny. But we'll make do with what we got. So today's video, we're just going to be playing 25, 50 cent, and the focus of this video is going to be how to use a heads-up display. As I have to fold ace queen, don't have any stats on the guy. If I knew he was crazy, I could maybe get it in, but I don't. Sad times. Yeah, I made a video on how to set up your heads-up display, which I think is very helpful and very necessary because to be competitive in today's online poker environment, you pretty much have to use a heads-up display. Just everyone else is using them. There's so much information on them. They're so helpful that it's just kind of mandatory. So if you haven't watched it yet, go ahead and find the video. I think it's called How to Set Up Your HUD, for lack of a better name. Wasn't too creative that day. And once you've got it set up, you can learn how to use it from this video. So right now you can see on table 4, Jimmerman, I have a decent sample size of hands. That's why his stats are actually, reasonable numbers. Whereas with a player like Talek or Ninja Dro, I don't have any hands on them yet, so not a lot of info there. But as the session goes on, my sample size will get bigger, uh, and I'll be able to make better reads on people and make better decisions. But the reason that the HUD is so helpful is that with all the information that it displays to you, it really allows you to break down your opponent's style of play and to find their leaks, habits that they have that are bad and are definitely mistakes that can be exploited. And the numbers just kind of paint the picture for you so that you can figure out very quickly where specifically this player has a weakness. And then it's up to you to figure out how to exploit it. Or if you're really lazy, I guess you can just email me and hope that I give you the answer. But yeah, I mean that's what you're trying to do at the end of the day in poker. Figure out how your opponents play or how they think, and then figure out the best way to take advantage of that. Um, Even the best players in the world have some leaks, and if you can identify them and know how to capitalize on them while playing a very mistake-free game yourself, you should be able to make a lot of money. So I'm just going to use Jimmermania as my example of the stats that I use. On the top row, we have the VPIP, which is voluntarily put in pot, and PFR, which is preflop raise. So the first stat indicates what percentage of hands this player plays. If you aren't familiar with what 24% means, go ahead and download PokerStove. It's a free program, and that will allow you to type in, I want to see what 20% of hands looks like, 40% of hands. You know what? I'll just show it to you guys, just so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. Hopefully I don't get any hands. So yeah, just go player one. You'd be like, okay, he plays 24% of hands, so okay, it's gonna be something like that. All the purple hands. And let's say you have a really tight player who only plays top 8% of hands. Well, that's gonna look something like this. A lot of big cards. And you can mess around with that program. Obviously, the range for 24% for Jimmermania is going to be slightly different than the one PokerStove shows, but you can just, screw around there and figure out which hands they're playing. So moving on, yeah, preflop raise is similar. It's what percentage of hands they raise. So the difference between the two stats would be which percentage of hands they are calling raises with or limping with. Typically in 6 max, it's more likely to be what hands they're calling with, at least in the case of good players. But, if you get a guy like Christian, who's playing 40% of hands, your strategy against him is going to be very different from a guy like Talek, who's playing 15% of his hands. Obviously, you're going to want to play more hands against Christian and give less action to a guy like Talek. So on the next row, my pink stat is what percentage of hands they're 3-betting. The purple stat is how often they fold to a 3-bet if you re-raise their open. It's a very useful stat for, determining which hands you want to be 3-betting with, as opposed to which hands you want to be just flat calling raises with, and which hands you want to be folding. The pink stat is 4-bet range. The blue stat is fold to 4-bet. The kind of purpley stat is 5-bet. It's a lot of stats. And at lower limits, the 4-bet, 5-bet, they aren't as important. But when you're playing higher stakes, situations involving those stats come up a lot more than you'd think. So it's important to have them available for easy access. Next stat is aggression factor, which basically it's a ratio of how often the player chooses an aggressive action, be it betting or raising, as opposed to a passive action, such as checking or calling. I don't know where folding fits in there. It's definitely more passive than aggressive, but it might just be kind of non-existent zero sum. So that's pretty useful. If you have a guy whose aggression is under 1 and he bets, he will typically have a hand. And if you have a guy whose aggression is like 5 or greater, that means he's just betting pretty much any time it's his turn, so you don't have to give him credit for having a good hand just because he bet. Most good regulars fall somewhere in the range of 2 to 4 for their aggression factor. So if you're sitting in that range, you're doing well. If you're a little low, you might want to work on getting it up. And if you're a little higher, can't be bad. If you know what you're doing, it's okay to be very aggressive. Unless your aggression factor is like a 12, then you might be just a wee bit out of line. Gonna check back here with the ace-6. I picked up a flush draw, but other than a 9, I don't know what hand he called the flop with that would fold the turn. And I'm actually ahead of some of his heart flush draws, so I have some showdown value. I think he has a king pretty often, though, and that he's not going to fold that to a second bet. And I might be getting check raised on the turns, so I wanted to give myself a shot to realize my equity. And that is why I checked. I'll just fold, get the reload in. Okay, so yeah, the top row is basically what kind of player they are. You can tell a lot about someone based on their VPIP, PFR, and their regression factor. It's very good for categorizing players. And then my second line is kind of their pre-flop game. You know, the 3-bet, 4-bet, 5-bet, fold to that stuff. That's all in the pre-flop domain. So then when we get to the realm of post-flop, the third line I have begins with cold call open. So that's what percentage of hands they're calling raises with. And again, can use PokerTracker and PokerStove to figure those things out. Okay, if I remember correctly, Jimmer Mania's 3-bet was not that high. So for that reason, I'm going to fold the ace-jack. If he had a very high 3-bet, like 12 or greater, I definitely would play on with that hand. Whether it's by calling or 4-betting would really depend on his 5-bet range, his fold to 4-bet, and which hands exactly he's 3-betting. Okay, well we have 6%, so I'm just going to do a little thing in here to show you guys what a 6% would look like. He's definitely going to have these hands. This, maybe this, maybe this, maybe this. There you go, 6%. That's obviously not the exact range. It's possible he does have some hands that he 3-bet bluffs with. But typically 6% 3-bet is mostly value hands. And you can see that against this range of yellow and purple hands here, ace-jack offsuit really isn't doing too well. So for that reason, I chose to fold. Whereas if he was, doing a 12% 3-bet range, you see that ace-jack is ahead of some of the hands, although still not too many. But I'd be more inclined to play with that hand if someone had those statistics. And it's very important to use statistics to factor into your decision, because what can be a completely standard or a very good and profitable play against one player could be a terrible money-losing play against another player type. So that's one reason having stats is so important. Anyway, moving down to the next line, yeah, I have call pre-flop, fold to c-bet, raise c-bet, donk bet. So that basically means when I'm the pre-flop raiser, if I'm planning to c-bet, I have a good idea of how often it's going to work, how often it's just going to get called, and how often it's going to get raised. This helps me determine whether I should be c-betting with a hand that has some outs, like let's say I have a weak flush draw. If someone has a really high flop check raise percentage or a high raise c-bet percentage, I'm going to be less inclined to want to c-bet with my flush draw, because it's going to cost me a lot of money to see the turn if I get check raised. In fact, I might not even get the price to see the turn. If, however, the player never check raises me, now I can c-bet not only my weak flush draws, but I can c-bet hands like bottom pair and middle pair, because worst case, they're just going to call my c-bet, and I still get to see my 5-out draw for the price I set on the flop. Maybe I can use the free card play. Likewise, if someone's folding a lot to c-bets, like 80%, you just kind of c-bet regardless of what your hand strength is, because it's just going to be instantly profitable against someone who's folding way too much to c-bet. Okay, so here, even though this guy is playing 25-20 from early position in my pop-up, I can see that he's opening a lot of hands. So I'm going to punish that statistic by 3-betting with this hand rather than calling. If he had a tight opening range from early position, I would definitely want to just flat call and try to, make a hand that could crack his big hand. But since he's going to be wide here a lot, he's going to have to fold to my 3-bet a good amount of the time. And I think the hand plays better having the lead against someone who has a wide range. It's not quite a strong enough hand for me to be trapping. But anyway, we'll just fire out one bullet here. If he doesn't have the ace, he'll probably fold here. If he does have the ace, he's probably not folding at any points, so I wouldn't fire multiple barrels on that flop. Okay, finishing up with the second row, I have fold to second barrel, and then I have the river aggression frequency. Because a lot of times, you'll bet the flop and the turn goes check, check. Then your opponent bets the river, or you'll check back the flop and they'll bet the turn. Whatever. The main thing is the river decisions are very important. You're dealing with big pots. You're dealing with big bets. And it's important to have, some information as to how often your opponent bets the river as a bluff, how often they bet it for value, and then how thin they can bet. This river aggression frequency will tell you these things. If it's very low, like 15 or under, they just always have the nuts when they're betting the river. As it goes up to 20, 25, that starts to mean that they're probably value betting a little bit thinner, which means, of course, we would have to call with weaker hands than we would if they didn't value bet thin or value bet wide. And if it's over 35 or 40, that means they're bluffing a lot. So that's when you can be hero calling with a lot of different hands, especially in spots where your opponent's likely to be polarized, because so much of their river betting range consists of bluffs. And that's something that, you get used to after using the HUD. And it's just like anything else. You just have to put in practice with it, get comfortable with it, learn to understand it, and then you can really master it and use it to its full potential. So this is just like a quick intro, and I'm not going to go too in-depth into any stats. I'm just kind of showing you the importance of them. And of course, we can do units on these things if you guys are really interested in that. Let's say you think you found a stat that could be extremely useful that maybe I don't use, and you want to know if it's worth including it in your HUD and in what way you can use it to your advantage. What numerical values would be deemed normal, what numerical values would be deemed absurd, stuff like that. So on the bottom row, I just have the post-flop game for when they are the pre-flop raiser. So the first one is attempt to steal, which lets me know what range of hands they are raising in steal positions when it's been folded to them. I have how often they c-bet, how often they c-bet the turn, how often they fold their c-bet to a raise on the flop, and how often they continuation bet in a 3-bet pot. And you guys by now can probably start to figure out why those would be useful. It helps me determine my strategy for which part of my range I should just be slow playing on the flop, calling for value, raising for value. All the different options are really dependent on what the most likely reaction from my opponent is. And Lazy is really going with the 3-bets today. Maybe he's bored. The 2s, I'm playing against a tight player on the button. I think it's okay to call. And, well, I guess the secret's out. I know when the sets are coming. Disappointing. Well, I can't check twice. I can't really think of a hand that would check back the flop, that would bet the turn and call a check raise. And if he's going to bet the turn with a hand, it's probably the same sort of hands that he's willing to call a bet with. So I'd rather start getting money in the pot and avoid possible check back on his part there. So I now realize with this video that not having a large sample of hands makes it kind of hard to show the value of the HUD and figuring out different strategies. So I can think of 2 options we can go with here. The first is I could do, maybe a 3-hour, 4-hour session and build up reads on each of these players and build up a hand sample on them so that by the third or fourth video, we really have a lot of hands and we have a clear picture of how they play, and then go over my adjustments to that. That would be a long video. The other option would be for you guys to send me videos of you playing in your regular games against your regular opponents where you will already have a large hand sample on your opponents. And then I can look at the stats on the video to let you know if you guys made the right plays against the various player types, stuff like that. I don't imagine this guy's folding any pair if I bet at this point. He might fold ace king, but that's about it. I'd rather just check and hope I'm good. But alas, I wasn't. Small loss. Also with the heads-up displays, you can make customized pop-ups, which I think is very useful because knowing, like what percentage of hands someone plays is useful. But then knowing what percentage of hands they play from each position is even more useful. Because, just because someone's tight doesn't mean they're tight from every position. And it can be misleading if you think someone's really tight, but they're actually opening the button every single time it's folded to them there. And you'll be giving them too much credit and therefore missing out on some value against them. So breaking down the stats by position is very useful. I do that for my 3-bet stats, squeeze stats, different call by position stats, all that stuff. Because I just think, you want to have as specific and accurate information as you possibly can in each situation so that you can, of course, make the best decision. Here, the ace-10 off could be 3-bet, but I see that Jimmerman's fold to 3-bet is very low. And I don't really want to be playing a pot out of position with the ace-10 offsuit. It's just not the strongest hand. And again, this, another example, top right table. Nines is a good hand, but this is the first time he's ever 3-bet. He's also playing very tight. So against the hands he's likely to be 3-betting, nines is not in that good shape. And I'm also, once again, going to be out of position. There are some players who might have a low fold to 3-bet, but they have a very high 4-bet range. So you can know that against those players, even if your 3-bet's not going to work all that often, you aren't going to be getting flat called that much. So you don't have to really worry so much about how the hand plays post-flop, because you're either getting 4-bet or folded to. So in that case, you could look more at 3-bet hands with blockers than hands that play well post-flop, and flat call with your hands that play well post-flop that can't continue to a 4-bet. Hope that one makes sense. It's a little bit high level, and I know that it's not the easiest thing to understand, but as you get more comfortable with the jargon, and again, you just get more practice and get more comfortable, everything I say will start to make a bit more sense. Ooh, not the best flop for me, but I do have 2 overcards, which is good for, 24% equity by the river. He called very fast, which is usually a sign of a marginal hand. So I'm going to empty the clip and just hope that I catch a river card that I can use to bluff him off of. And, well, now it's for value. But king, queen, or jack would have done the trick too. Of course, he could have a flush, but I feel like a 9-8 is more likely. So just going to rip it all in and hope he doesn't snap call. Here's a player who's opening a bunch, so I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet him. I could definitely call with the ace-jack as I'm ahead of the range of hands he's going to be opening from that position. But ace-jack offsuit doesn't play that well in a multi-way situation, so I'd prefer to 3-bet and potentially get the pot heads up. If I had a hand like ace-jack suited or king-queen suited, I'd be more interested to flat call because the suitedness adds a lot of value in terms of the hand's ability to play multi-way. And pretty cool, I just 3-bet him because I'm going to 3-bet him again, and this time I got it. Disappointing. We can see on the HUD that his purple fold to 3-bet is 100%. Now over a larger sample, that's obviously going to change a little bit. But this seems like the type of player who we want to be 3-bet bluffing a lot and maybe 3-betting with a slightly wider value range as well. Because he's opening a lot of hands, as we can see he's playing 34-29, which is quite high. But he's always folding to the 3-bet. So he's opening with a bunch of hands that aren't very good. And when he runs into resistance, he just backs off and cedes. So he's a good candidate to be 3-betting a lot as a bluff. Whereas if he has a very, very low fold to 3-bet and he's opening a lot of hands, we're going to widen our value range and 3-bet with more hands that we are 3-betting with for value. But we're not going to be 3-betting with too many bluff hands because we're just getting called anyway. And why do we want to be going into a hand, going into the post-flop realm knowing that we don't have a great hand and we're up against someone who's going to be fighting with us, giving us a hard time. Gonna run out the video for just like 5 more minutes. Given that I just got back from Vegas and vacation, I have a lot of things to do. And I also, I feel a tad bit rusty making this video, and I hate to give you guys anything less than my best. So I want to keep this one short, and then when I get some more rest and come back for the next one, you guys are going to get my A game once again. But as per usual, I need your guys' help. Please send me messages on YouTube for exactly what you would like to see. What site you'd like me to play on in the video, what limits you'd like me to play on, how many tables, and what format. Because I can also use a hand history replayer. Like I could do tournament reviews if you guys would like to see that, or I can also review your guys' stuff. Like I think maybe we're ready to expand a little bit. You guys have a lot of videos of me playing. I've never seen you guys play. And I think that a more effective way for you guys to improve is for me to let you know where you're making mistakes rather than you guys watching me in my awesomeness and trying to emulate the way I play. Because at the end of the day, the best style for you is going to be whatever your natural style is. And just making small adjustments to the way you already play is going to be much more comfortable, much more easy to do than trying to completely change your style and emulate someone else's game because everything's so foreign and you may not understand the reason behind the moves. Whereas when you're the one who's playing, you know why you're doing what you're doing. And if you can just get a little push in the right direction as to where you might want to make slight changes, it should be really good for you guys' win rate. So anyone who's interested in that also, send a message to me on YouTube. You'll have to get some recording software to make the video, but they're all very easy to use. And I believe Camtasia has a free trial, so I'd highly recommend that. For anyone who knows other products that do video recording, screen recording, please just post them in the comments of this video, and we'll put them in the top comments to save everyone time. I'm okay with computers, but I'm not the best, so someone who knows what they're doing, please come bail me out on this one. Okay, just gonna do one more orbit on each table, and then pack it in. King, queen off. Mr. Brain. Well, not only is he tight, from early position, he's the tightest. 8%. So against him, king, queen going in the muck. Label. And for those of you who want to know a little bit more about the player types that these guys would fall into, you can watch the video called What's Your Game that talks about the 6 different player types, 3 big winners, 3 big losers, how they tick, you know, kind of how they think, as well as strengths and weaknesses. And likewise, maybe down the road we can get a bit more in depth in that. I figure that's something you guys would probably be pretty interested in. Maybe. I don't know. You guys just got to tell me what you want, because I can only infer so much. I can't read your guys' minds. Whoops. That's Camtasia for anyone who is interested in seeing what it looks like. It's very simple. You get your program up, you click record the screen, select the area you want to record, hit the record button on this little guy, and then when you're done, you hit stop, and then very easy to produce the video from there. So anyone who's interested in doing that, you know, just record, well, I'd say 20 to 30 minutes is ideal in length, but the best thing to do would probably be to record a long session, you know, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, and then pick which section of the session was the most interesting and had the most spots and difficult hands to go over, and then kind of cut out that 20-minute segment and use that for the video. That just gives you the best odds of having something actually happen. It would suck to record for 20 minutes and you're just completely card dead. You're like, do I really want to send him this video of nothing? So if you record a larger sample, you can then chop it down to pick the best stuff, and then that will give us the highest quality content. Everyone will be excited, people won't be bored, and we can learn more. Speaking of card dead, looks like that's how I finished up. One more pot. Come on, 2 kings. It's amazing how when you ask for it, it just seems to come. Okay. Using the HUD stats, Buddy's full to c-bet is 100%. So I would c-bet everything. Ooh, not. If I was bluffing, I would continue to bet here. But because I want to make sure I get value, I'm going to check here and bet the river. If I bet there, he has to worry that I'm going to fire the river as well. So the implied threat of the bet is very high, and it's much harder for him to call a bet on the turn than it is for him to call a bet on the river. But looks like it didn't matter. And that's it. End of sesh. Looks like I won like 30 bucks. Not bad. Not bad for whatever it was, 20, 30 minutes work. So anyway, Evan, for Grips.com. Extremely happy to be back. Can't wait to hear from you guys, get the content rolling out. I got nothing but free time, so put me to work, guys. I'm here for you. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys are happy to have me back. Now it's your turn. Go out there and get stacking.